Daniel Crow woke before the sun, the same way he had on most days since he came to the small ranch in southern Arizona. The air was cool, almost cold, the kind of morning that made the breath rise in soft clouds. He saddled his horse quietly, not wanting to wake the other ranch hands, and rode out toward the creek to fill the water barrels. It was a quiet job, but Daniel did not mind. He liked the sound of the early morning, the wind moving through the dry grass, the distant call of a hawk, the soft thump of his horse's hooves. It was peaceful, and he needed that peace after many hard years. The creek lay about a mile from the ranch. Most of the time it was empty. No travelers, no ranchers, no hunters. Just rocks, water, and silence. Daniel guided his horse down the small slope and dismounted. The water was clear this time of year, cold enough to sting his hands. He walked toward the edge, carrying the empty buckets. The day felt normal, almost predictable. He had no idea that in a few steps, his life would change forever. Just as he knelt to fill the first bucket, he heard something he never expected. A soft splash, light and quick. It was not the sound of a fish or a falling leaf. It was the sound of movement. Daniel froze, the bucket halfway in the water. He slowly lifted his head. At first, he saw only ripples and sunlight touching the creek. Then he noticed something else. A shadow. A figure. And then, in a brief moment that seemed to slow time, he saw her. A young Apache woman stood in the shallow water, her long dark hair wet and heavy down her back. She looked tired, as if she had been walking for days. Her face was calm but strained. Her eyes focused on the water, unaware that Daniel had arrived. She was washing dust from her arms, wiping her face, trying to breathe and rest. It was a simple, human moment. Nothing more. But Daniel knew instantly that she was not just any traveler. She looked like someone running from danger, someone who had not known safety for a long time. He knew he should turn away immediately, and he did. His first instinct was respect, not intrusion. He shifted back quietly, trying not to disturb her. But as he stepped away, his boot pressed on a dry branch hidden under the grass. The branch snapped loudly, like a warning shot in the still air. The woman reacted instantly. She turned sharply, eyes wide, and stepped back in fear. Her hands tightened as if ready to run or defend herself. She did not shout, she did not speak. But Daniel could see her panic. She looked like someone who expected harm from any stranger. Daniel lifted his hands slowly, palms open, showing he meant no danger. He did not move closer. He stood still, breathing carefully, hoping his calm might ease her fear. For a long moment, their eyes met. It was not romantic or dramatic. It was simply two people trapped in a fragile instant, both unsure of what the other might do. She held her breath. Daniel did too. Then, without a word, she moved quickly toward the trees, grabbing her small bundle of belongings. She disappeared into the forest like a whisper, leaving only the ripples on the creek to show she had been there at all. Daniel exhaled slowly, realizing his heart was pounding. He had never seen such fear, such exhaustion, such strength hidden inside someone so young and alone. He stood there for a minute, staring at the place where she had vanished. He wondered who she was, why she was running, and why fate had placed him there at that exact moment. It felt like an accident, a mistake, but also something deeper, something he could not explain. He filled the buckets with water, but his mind was far away. As he rode back to the ranch, he kept thinking about her. He had only seen her for a moment, but that moment had stirred something inside him, something he did not understand. He felt concern first, then curiosity, and then a feeling he could not name, but it stayed with him like a shadow. When he returned to the ranch, the place was already busy. Ranch hands were saddling horses, carrying tools, preparing for another long day. Daniel carried the water buckets to the storage shed. But as he placed them down, he heard the distant sound of hooves. A group of soldiers rode in from the east, dust swirling behind them. The ranch owner came out to greet them, and Daniel stood nearby, watching silently. The leader of the soldiers asked if anyone had seen a young Apache woman passing through the area. She had escaped 2 nights earlier, they said, after her village was attacked. They believed she might be hiding in the nearby valleys. They warned that she was desperate, that she might seek help or steal food, and that anyone caught assisting her would face punishment. Daniel felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He said nothing. He stood still, face calm. But inside, his mind raced. So she was a fugitive. Not because of crime, but because her people had suffered. Because she had survived something terrible, and now she was being hunted. After the soldiers left, Daniel walked away from the group, pretending to focus on work. But his thoughts remained on the creek. He pictured her frightened eyes, her trembling breath, her thin frame that showed she had not eaten well in days. The soldiers' voices echoed inside him. If they found her, she might not survive. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. Yet the idea of her alone in the wild, running from armed men who were searching the land with dogs and rifles, made his heart twist in a strange, heavy way. He tried to shake the feeling, but it stayed. That night, the ranch hands gathered around a fire, laughing and talking. Daniel sat with them, but his mind was far away. He stared into the flames, thinking of the woman alone in the darkness somewhere beyond the hills. He wondered if she had shelter, if she had food, if she had a chance. He told himself it was not his place to get involved. The land was dangerous. Helping someone hunted by soldiers was almost like signing his own punishment. But the image of her frightened eyes kept returning to him. He remembered the way she froze when the branch snapped, the way she clutched her small bundle, the way she disappeared like a ghost into the trees. He lay in his bunk later, trying to sleep. But sleep did not come. He kept hearing her breathing. He kept seeing her hands tremble. He kept imagining her wandering somewhere alone, injured or hungry. By midnight, Daniel knew something clearly. He could not ignore what he had seen. He could not push it away. He was not a man who turned his back on someone in danger. When morning came, he decided he would return to the creek. Not to disturb her, but simply to make sure she had something, food, water, even a blanket. A small act of kindness, nothing more. He did not know what it meant for his future. He only knew one truth. That brief moment at the creek had changed something inside him forever. Daniel rose before dawn the next morning, the same way he always did, but today felt different. There was a quiet urgency inside him, a feeling he could not ignore. He saddled his horse quickly, looking around the ranch to make sure no one questioned him. Everyone else was still asleep or too busy to care. It gave him the chance he needed. He slipped a small blanket, a packet of dried meat, a canteen of water, and some bandages into his saddlebag. He did not know if she would take them or even see them, but he had to try. As he rode toward the creek, the sky slowly turned from night to soft orange. The early light touched the land gently, and the quiet air felt almost heavy with expectation. When Daniel reached the creek, he stopped his horse far from the water and approached on foot, moving carefully. He did not expect to see her again, but a part of him hoped. He placed the food and blanket under a rock ledge near a tree, somewhere she might check without being exposed. Then he stepped back and waited for a moment, listening to the silence. She did not appear. The creek was empty, motionless, as if no one had ever been there. Daniel stood there for a few long minutes before finally turning to leave. He reminded himself that helping someone once did not mean he would see them again. She was a fugitive, moving constantly. She might have traveled far already. That thought brought him a strange sadness he could not explain. When he returned to the ranch, the soldiers were still patrolling the area. They questioned the ranch hands again, asking about footprints or strange movements. Daniel kept his face calm and answered simply that he had seen nothing unusual. Inside, he felt the pressure tightening. If the soldiers searched deeper into the valleys, she would not stand a chance. The day stretched long. Daniel worked with the other hands, fixing fences, feeding horses, checking cattle. But his mind was never fully on the tasks. He kept glancing at the horizon, wondering if she had found the food, wondering if she was safe. When the sun began to set and the ranch quieted again, Daniel felt drawn back to the creek. Something inside him told him to check. He rode slowly, letting the evening wind cool his thoughts. When he reached the creek, he found the ledge empty. The food was gone. The blanket was gone. Someone had taken it. He looked closely at the ground, and there they were, light footprints, small and delicate, leading away from the water and into the canyon. His heart eased a little. She had come. She was alive. Still, he felt uneasy. Those footprints looked uneven, like someone walking with a limp. He followed the trail carefully, stopping now and then to check the ground. The tracks led upward, toward a narrow part of the canyon that very few people used. As he stepped deeper, the air grew colder, and he noticed broken branches, disturbed rocks, and one thing that made him stop: a few drops of dried blood on a stone. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He crouched down, touching the stone lightly with his fingertips. She might be injured. She might be struggling to move. He stood and continued walking. His steps grew faster, his heart beating louder. He did not think of the danger. He did not think of the soldiers. He could only think of her, alone and hurt. The footprints grew faint, but he kept searching. After some time, he reached a fallen tree near a sharp bend in the canyon. The spot was quiet, hidden by thick bushes. And there, behind the tree, he finally found her. She was lying on her side, eyes half open, breathing weakly. Her ankle looked swollen, and her arm had a long cut that was no longer bleeding but still raw. Her face was pale, her lips dry, and her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. When she noticed Daniel, she tried to push herself up, fear flashing through her eyes again. But her strength faded quickly, and she sank back down. Daniel lifted his hands slowly, just like before, showing calm and peace. "It's all right," he said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you." The woman watched him carefully, her breathing uneven. She was too weak to run and too tired to fight. For a moment, Daniel thought she might refuse his help, but then he saw something shift in her eyes. Trust, or at least the beginning of it. He knelt beside her and opened his saddlebag. He offered her water first. She hesitated, staring at him as if unsure whether she could trust even a simple drink, but her thirst was too strong. She took the canteen slowly and drank in small sips. Her hands shook, but she did not stop until she felt strength returning to her body. Daniel tore a strip of clean cloth and gently wrapped her arm, careful not to cause pain. She watched him closely, saying nothing, but her eyes softened slightly. He pointed to her twisted ankle, and she nodded weakly as he wrapped it as well. She whispered something in Apache, a word Daniel did not understand, but her tone held gratitude. When she tried to stand, she could barely move. Daniel understood immediately what he needed to do. There was a hidden cave nearby, a place he used for shelter during storms. It was close enough that he could help her reach it before night fully settled. He lifted her gently, supporting most of her weight. She leaned against him because she had no other choice. Her small frame felt fragile under his arm, like someone who had been carrying fear, hunger, and pain for far too long. They walked slowly, step by step, until they reached the cave. It was cool inside but safe, hidden from soldiers' patrols. Daniel set her down carefully and gave her the blanket. She pulled it around herself, finally able to rest without fear of being seen. He made a small fire at the cave's entrance, enough to give warmth, but not enough to draw attention. He gave her more food, soft pieces easy for her to eat. She took them with shaking hands, eating slowly as if each bite reminded her she was still alive. As the fire crackled softly, she looked at him for a long moment, really looked at him. She pointed to herself and spoke her name. Nalin. Her voice was soft, almost broken, but steady enough to carry meaning. Daniel repeated it gently. Nalin. She nodded. Then she pointed at him, waiting. Daniel, he said. She tried to say it, the pronunciation different in her tongue. But it made Daniel smile. The cave was quiet, except for the fire and their soft breaths. Nalin watched Daniel with tired but calmer eyes. She understood he had saved her life, even if she could not express it fully. And Daniel understood something too. Helping her was no longer a small act of kindness. It was a choice that tied their paths together. For the next 2 days, Daniel returned with more food and medicine, always checking the land for soldiers first. Slowly, Nalin's strength returned. She spoke little English, but she tried. She told him through simple words and gestures about her village, how she escaped, how she had walked nights without rest. Daniel listened with quiet respect, never pushing her to say more than she wished. When she was strong enough to stand without falling, Daniel knew she needed to leave soon. The soldiers would not search forever, but staying too close was still dangerous. He decided to guide her toward the mountains, where her distant relatives might hide. The path was long, but he knew the safest trails. On the morning of their parting, Nalin stood before him, steady and calm. She placed something small in his hand, a carved wooden pendant shaped like a leaf. It was simple, but the way she gave it told him it meant much more. She touched her heart, then touched his hand, a silent gesture of deep gratitude. Daniel watched as she walked into the trees, each step stronger than before. She turned once, gave him a final nod, and then disappeared into the tall pines. He stood there long after she was gone, feeling the quiet settle around him. He knew he might never see her again. He knew helping her had put him in danger. But he also knew he would never forget her. A single moment at a creek had changed his life, guiding him toward courage he did not know he had. And as he rode back to the ranch, the small wooden pendant safe in his pocket, Daniel understood something that would stay with him forever. Sometimes a brief meeting with a stranger leaves a mark deeper than years of living.